Hey YouTube, it's your boy Magnificent. So we're going on episode 2 of having a big family. So one thing to keep in mind, there is no problem that you have that cannot be solved by asking simply the right question. Meaning there is no problem you have. The only reason you have the problem is because you're just not asking the right question. So what question do I have to ask to solve that problem is the question you should be asking. Einstein said it a different way. He said, a problem can never be solved with the same mind that created it. Meaning you gotta be bigger than the problem. Meaning the thinking you had when the problem existed, your mind has to expand bigger to be able to overcome that. Meaning you need to become a bigger person, because otherwise you'll be trying to put a square in a circle box. It just doesn't work. Okay. So what problem are we talking about solving today? Well, having a big family. In order to solve any problem, you got to believe in your heart of hearts that there's a right answer X. So in order to solve problems, all you have to do is play Jeopardy. The answer's in the question, meaning if you look at and play Jeopardy, every person that gets the right answer says, what is the answer? What is the question rather? What is the question? So think in questions. If you ask questions and if you live your life in questions, you'll find not only will you be more engaged, but not only will you solve the problems better, you'll find that you're better able to teach. Think about that. You're better able to pass on what you've learned versus just solving the problem. So there are a couple of myths, rather, that people create to not have a big family, right? And I want to go through maybe some of the ideas. What's preventing us from doing this, right? So I got a list here, and I'm going to hope maybe you add to it. All right. Reason number 1, aren't children very expensive? Well, that's a good question. Question is, why are children expensive? Are they inherently expensive, or is it your standard that's expensive? A couple of another ones. Maybe what makes children expensive? I want you to think of it this way. How is it possible that years ago, where families, raised 9, 10 kids, 6 kids, 5 kids, with, one sole income, yes, inflation's here. How is it in third world countries where they have little, right? They're able to still raise families, and yes, they may not have a lot, but they had love, right? There are examples of, the opposites where they were abused. Of course, those always exist, but let's look at the most part. They have very little, yet they were able to still raise a big family. Yet how is it possible? Why is it that the more we acquire, the less children we have? That's a good question to ask. So a couple of other questions. What makes children expensive? You gotta, and clarify that, because, we do know it's $3,500 just for delivery. You add all the prenatals and all that stuff to the United States today, you're looking about 55 to $8,000, but do you have to go through all that? Think about this. We've gone through how many centuries of childbirth, of children successfully being born, and the more advanced we are, do we have to really go through all that? And that's one thing my wife and I didn't know. There are certain things you don't really have to do that add to the bill. They don't say, hey, kind of like an a la carte meal. Hey, do you want this? Do you want that? They just do it as if, and then you end up getting the bill later. So again, what makes children expensive? Another one, what workaround might allow you to go through the back door so that they're not so expensive? Here's another one. These are just questions you got to ask. And again, we're passing, some of the reasons people don't have kids now. We've moved on to maybe some questions you need to ask if you're going to be resourceful, because let's be honest, in today's day and age, you will have to be resourceful in order to get the biggest bang for your buck, in order to be able to survive. Because if you just go through things as they are, similar to going and just buying a new car versus doing your research and finding out what the best deal is, fuel economy, and so forth and so on. So another question is, what resources might you lack, right? Just off the bat, knowing what you need and what children need, what resources, lack of knowledge, lack of, financial know-how, maybe financial capital, what might you lack that might limit your ability to have, provide, basically, let's say, not have, provide for a big family. Another one, what relationships might you have to cultivate so that you can bypass, the third party guy, so you can bypass the middleman and get straight to the person or the thing that you need, or third party expenses. Here's another one. What skills might you have to acquire in order for you to be able to be more resourceful in your house and save? Here's another question. How could you involve a village in raising your child? Because let's be honest, in today's day and age, it takes a village to raise a child. There is no way around it. There's so many questions that you can ask to solve the problems, because the truth is, if you don't ask these questions, all you are afraid of, or might not even admit that you're afraid of, is the boogeyman under the bed. But when you start asking these questions, you're like, you know what? That is true. And living in the United States, sometimes we get carried away with just having to make and do. And it's easier. It is the path of least resistance not to. But maybe consider where you came from. Consider those who came before you and why they did what they did. Some say, well, they weren't as smart or whatever else. That's like saying the reason that people weren't as good, weren't as sophisticated, the reason that they use hieroglyphics was because they weren't as smart. So that's why we use, complicated writing today. Yet you look at text messages that are getting shorter and shorter. Instead of gotta go, people just put G2G, instead of, a word, they just do a picture. Think about that, So who was really smarter? The people that had the pictures in the first place, or the people that are going to the pictures now who think they're smarter? So again, it's just some things to consider. In order to be able to have the family, you got to ask the questions. Why don't you want one? Or maybe why don't you have one? And why is the number you have? And the bottom line is, as long as you can sleep well at night, all is well. But sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And there's just such a great need of love in the world. And I believe a lot of people watching this, they're great people. They have love in their homes. And man, if you could be the destination of that child that needs love, man, and if you could make it happen, I think it's worth the sacrifice to do so.